I've tried a huge variety of papers, and this hack worked on every paper I tried. Want to know how to stencil with watercolor without bleeding? Then you're gonna love this stenciling hack. If you've tried stenciling with watercolor before, you know it can be frustrating. It seems impossible to stop the bleeding and get a clean stenciled image. The result is usually a bit messy, which might be okay if distressed is the look you're going for. If not, keep watching. I have a solution for you. Instead of a sloppy mess like this, your watercolor stenciling could look like this. Yes, you can stencil with watercolor without the paint bleeding under the stencil. This is real watercolor stenciled with sharp edges. I did not use a temporary adhesive. I did not use ink or other mediums to fake a watercolor look. I want to let you in on the secret to stenciling with watercolor because it's an amazing technique for adding pattern or texture to your paintings or backgrounds. I've been using this hack a lot while working on my travel journal. It's a great way to add a background design or a border to any page. With this technique, you can stencil onto almost any type of paper. You're not limited to watercolor paper. It's truly magical. I don't know about you, but I want watercolor gradient patterns on everything. Greeting cards, journal pages, and backgrounds. I've tried a huge variety of papers, and this hack worked on every paper I tried. Each paper takes watercolor a little bit differently, but with this hack, you can always get clean edges. It works on watercolor paper, sketchbook paper, rice paper, journal pages, vintage book pages, vintage music paper, manila folders, vintage grid paper, tracing paper, and tea bags. And that's just the papers I've tried so far. Amazing, right? Want to know the secret? The problem isn't your stenciling technique or the watercolor paint. The problem is the brush you're using. Watercolor brushes are all wrong for stenciling. Watercolor brushes are designed to hold a lot of water and deliver it generously back onto the paper, which is usually what we want when we're working with watercolor. But too much water is a problem when we're stenciling. Stenciling works best when the paint applicator and the medium is as dry as possible. That's why ink pads are so popular for stenciling. To stencil with watercolor, you need a brush that can slurp up watercolor but release it slowly back onto the paper. That way, it doesn't have a chance to puddle and seep under the stencil. Instead, the pigment absorbs right where you want it to on the paper. Through trial and error, I have found the best brush for stenciling with watercolor. This brush is really popular in the card making and paper crafting world. It's called an ink blending brush. They're for picking up ink from an ink pad and applying it to the paper. These brushes help blend the ink seamlessly. These brushes are also used for stenciling with ink. Maybe you've seen these brushes before, or you have some of these brushes but didn't realize you could use them with watercolor. I didn't either at first, but one day I didn't have the color I wanted in an ink pad, so I decided to try my watercolor. It took a few tries to get the technique right, but it worked. An ink blending brush has a gazillion fine, soft bristles. So soft. It can hold a lot of watercolor or ink, but its superpower is spreading that watercolor or ink lightly on the paper without soaking it. It's practically dry brushing the pigment onto the paper. In my course, Creative Textures for Watercolor, I teach 5 different ways to use stencils with watercolor. 3 of the techniques use these ink blending brushes. I cover how to do wet on dry stenciling, making smooth color gradients, how to do wet on wet stenciling for soft, not sloppy edges, and how to create a 2-color design in just 1 layer, plus a few other stenciling techniques. And that's just a handful of the 45 watercolor texture techniques I teach in the course. If you want a full step-by-step demo of each of these stenciling techniques, check out the course at the link below. You have to try this technique with watercolor. These ink blending brushes allow you to create really soft blends and transitions between colors. You can also easily fade out the edges of your stenciled area using the brush to blend out the color. You don't need to use any water to create soft edges. These brushes also work well with flimsy stencils like acetate or punchinella. With these brushes, you can stencil super fine details without bleeding. I used punchinella to stencil these tiny stars onto sketchbook paper and they turned out perfect. Ink blending brushes come in a variety of sizes. I like this medium size brush the best. The head of the brush is 3/4 of an inch. I've included a link to the brushes I use below the video. As a side note, with the holidays coming up, a set of these brushes would make a great gift for a creative loved one. If you already have ink blending brushes, you may want to get a separate set to use with watercolor. Ink blending brushes are really difficult to clean completely. You can see the paint stains the bristles, but it's also possible that some of the pigment is left behind too. Since watercolor paint reactivates with water, any leftover paint in the brush could come out the next time you use it. To avoid color contamination, I have different brushes for different colors. I have this fun rainbow set, so when I'm stenciling, I don't have to try to clean out my brushes to change colors. I just switch brushes. In fact, it's a bad idea to wash these brushes out while you're stenciling. That's the biggest mistake I made in the beginning when I only had a few brushes. These brushes hold a ton of water, and if you get them saturated, the stenciling technique won't work. You'll have to wait for the brush to dry out, and that could take overnight. Also, do not ever dip an ink blending brush in your water jar to rinse it out. It will not rinse out completely and it will just get saturated. To clean blending brushes, you need a silicone cleaning pad like this. After I'm done with my brushes for the day, I put a drop of dish soap on this cleaning pad. I rub the brush on it under running water until the water runs clear. I hope I've just given you a new way to use your stencils with watercolor. The trick to getting clean stencil results with watercolor is all in the brush you use. Now that you know how to stencil successfully with watercolor, you can make a bunch of these pre-painted mini sketchbooks with all your favorite stencils. Watch my mini sketchbook tutorial to see how.